Welcome to Dev Days of Summer 2024 for this session, FireDAC Secret Weapons, more than Delphi data access. I'm a huge fan of FireDAC, and maybe the other thing we call this is my favorite features. My name is Jim McKeeth. I am the Director of Consulting for GDK Software USA. GDK Software is a company that specializes in Delphi consulting. We have a large group of developers across 4 countries in the Netherlands, UK, Brazil, and the US. So if you or anyone you know needs Delphi consulting, whether it's some expertise or some additional capacity, check out our website at gdksoftware.com, and we would love to talk to you more about it. Always code to an interface and always present to an interface. So here's my agenda, what we're going to go over today. We're going to talk about in-memory tables, local SQL, batch moves, NoSQL and MongoDB, and then some of the new security and safety features, new in FireDAC Grad Studio 12. And now let's implement our interface. FDMemTable is the key for a lot of this stuff here, so we're going to start with that. If you're familiar with the T-client dataset, it's very similar to that. And the FDMemTable, it's not so much about the table being kept in memory, but it's more of a disconnected data set. If you compare the T table and the TFDMemTable, you'll see that the TFD table has a connection name where the FDMemTable does not. And if you look at the hierarchy of components, you'll see that the TFD table and TFD query descend from TFD RDB BMS dataset, whereas the memtable descends from the adapted dataset, which is the parent of RDBMS dataset. So the RDBMS dataset's where that connection is introduced. So if you want to create one from scratch, which is incredibly useful just to have a place to store data, all you have to do is go to the field defs. If you want to completely define it, and you define the field defs, the field you want. Alternatively, you can load a existing one from file, or you can assign a data from another data set. So basically it clones it at that point. And once that happens, you can actually then edit the data set, which is really kind of cool. So you can edit at design time and edit the data that's in there, view the data, or create the data you're going to use in your application. One note about storing, whether it be storing to a file or to a stream, reading or writing, is you need a storage link, which there's 3 components. There's an XML, a binary, and a JSON component. And this depends, which one you need depends on the format you're using. You can specify auto, and then it will guess based on the file name, but you need to include the one that matches either way. So depending on what you want, if you want to have a well-formed XML, JSON, a standalone JSON file, or a binary file, I usually go with binary unless there's some reason I want otherwise. The JSON and XML is specific to FireDAC. So you could load it into something else to try and read it, but it's not really designed for that. One note about these components is once you add them to the form, all they do is include the unit they're from. So they don't actually do anything with the components themselves. You can remove them, or you can just add the required unit to use this class. Also, there's the FD table adapter. Now, the FD table adapter, you connect it to your, saw the diagram there with the blue. The FDMemTable connects to a table adapter. The table adapter connects to one or more FD commands, which have connections. And then that there allows you to execute commands and then take the results of those commands and put them in the memtable. All of that, those components, is the same as using an FD query. So if you're like, oh, I'm using an FD query, but I need to change some behavior or something like that, you can make it yourself, if you will, using those components. So it gives you that ability to modularize it, break it apart, and have more control and customization over things. There are some links for the FDMemTable if you want to go out and read more about it in the doc wiki. And let's do some demos of FDMemTable. I'll show you how to put together FDMemTable from scratch here. I've got other components on here, but no FDMemTable, so let's add that now. And I will connect my data source to the FDMemTable. And right now, if I set this to active, gives me an error. data table or data view, blah, blah, blah. So the secret here is I need to come to field defs. I don't know if it's a secret. It's in the documentation, and add a new field def. And we'll give it a name of key, and we'll make it wide string. And we'll add another field def. We'll call it value. And we'll change the size to 40. Now, if we set our MemTable to active, we've got design time preview, but no data. Right click, edit dataset, and row with a value. And we got design time, edit, and preview. That's pretty cool. Now, if I run this, if I make a change, and then run it again, change is gone because all the data is streamed in the form file. You can see right at design time, it's still there. So nothing's going to change. But if we save to a file, we'll make an XML file. And so here it still shows with a value, but when I hit load, there's the change. So there we go. That's the basics of creating an FDMemTable and being able to work with it. As far as adding values, I'll show you that you can do the assign dataset. If you have another dataset on the form, you can assign it this way, or you could load from a file on disk here if you want to load it up. In one way, local SQL is kind of the evolution of the FDMemTable, but another way, local SQL is so amazing. Actually, either way, it's still amazing. Basically, what local SQL does is it uses a local SQLite database engine, DBMS, to allow you to run SQL on various data sets. Now, the cool thing is you can actually have either just data that didn't exist in a data set, you can just put it in a data set and use it that way. So if there's something you're like, oh, I need to do a set operation, it would be really easy to do in SQL. Well, now you can do that with local SQL. Or the other thing you can do is take data sets from different databases, heterogeneous data sets, and do a join across those using local SQL, which is just really amazing. When you think about it, the fact that it's using SQLite behind the scenes, it's like, okay, it's not pure magic, but it's so useful. So no database management system required besides local or SQLite, which is compiled to your application. So there's no external dependencies, no connection outside of your application. It just is able to do all of this locally within your application. Little sample I put together here just to show you how to put together the pieces of local SQL. Actually, I guess I'll show the components right now. I have got the local SQL component and then a FD connection that has the driver set to SQLite. All right, so that's the local SQL engine. Then I've got two FD tables down here, FDMemTables down here, that I've set up with field defs and added the data set to put some data in here. And we can see them displayed in the grid there. And then I have an FD query here. Now for these two FDMemTables, they have a local SQL property here, which points back to local SQL 1. And you can also, if you go to local SQL, the data sets, when you set them that way, they get populated here, where you can override the name if you want to, or give them a schema name so you can get really complicated here with this. But I'm not going to change any of that right now. So once I've done that, then I want to actually we deactivate this first. So you want to activate it in this order. You want to activate the FD connection first, which is this one, and then the local SQL. And I believe I actually get an error message or do the other way around. Let me try it and see. Didn't get an error message. I think that like if you're using like heterogeneous tables, you'll get a data set, you'll get an error message. So I always activate it, connection first, then local SQL. So now the FD query is connected to the same FD connection. So all three are connected to are connected into the same FD connection, but these two are sources and this is the destination. All right. And the reason these two are sources is because they go through the local SQL as well. Well, yeah, these aren't connected directly to that. They're connected to it through there. Yeah, that makes sense. So now I can go into the FD query in the query editor and say, select star from FDMemTable 1. I was messing around here and didn't set something back up right. Did I spell it right? Datasets, FDMemTable 1, query. Wow, that's really weird. So, active. Okay. So let's do this. I messed something up doing those in order. This is why you always do it in order. Let's try this again. Local SQL. All right. So these two are going to point to local SQL. And the local SQL is going to point to the connection. And then I make the connection apple active first, connected. Now notice it's connected on this one, and then here it's called active. All right. And so now, there we go. Do it in order. So there's table 1. There's table 2. And I can do an inner join on FDMemTable 1. On ID equals key. And there we go. And I could do like key times 2 or 1 and 2. I don't know. Whatever you want to do. But basically you get the idea that gives you that connection. You can do joins. Again, this can be between any data sets. Doesn't have to be FDMemTables. It could be any other data sets at all. Batch move is a feature I use a lot for non-programming related tasks, I guess you could say. Basically, it's your own personal data pump. So if you ever have some data in one database or in a text file that you need to move into another database or another text file, that's where batch move comes in. And so you take batch move and you connect it for a reader and a writer. Now, you can be a reader from a SQL, a reader from a data set, or a reader from text, and then a writer, and you can mix it up, right? So you can read from text to text, or you can read from text to data set, or you can read from data set to SQL, or however combination you want to do there. There's some configuration options in here. And actually, if you do the text, you can right click and say guess text formatting, and it will do its best to try and guess the text formatting, but you can go in there and also configure the way the text formatting is done as well. And the crazy thing is you don't even have to compile the application. If you right click on the batch remove component, it will, you can execute it at design time and perform the process operations. And so I've used this before where I'm like, I've got some data and I got to put it in this data set, or I've got to take some data on this data set and do something with it. And I've just used batch move in the IDE at design time, set it all up, right click execute, and it does it. And it saves me a lot of time. And again, without having to write any code, I didn't even have to compile it, which is just kind of crazy if you think about it. MongoDB is not an RDBMS. It doesn't have the relational aspect of it. It's a document database system. It's in a class called NoSQL databases, which you could say is NoSQL, as in it doesn't use SQL, or some people say it says it's not only SQL is what it means. Either way, you don't typically use SQL, although you can with MongoDB, document databases like MongoDB. Instead of having data in columns and rows like you're used to, each record is a JSON-like document, which is called BSON, which can have a schema. Now, in practice, the rows are consistent, and you can have indexes or records are consistent. They consistently implement a schema. But what that can be with JSON is you could have, for example, in one record, you could have an array in there essentially, or complex data like that. So let's say instead of having a person and then a separate table of phone numbers in it, you can have a single person record, and then they can have one or more or zero or more phone numbers in that individual's record. Does that have to be stored in a separate table to have them in each one relationship? That can all be done in a single record. It is typically considered to be really fast, although I'm sure all the other databases improve their performance as well. So it's, you don't switch to MongoDB to be fast. You switch to MongoDB because you want to have the document style. We could go into MongoDB into way more detail, but it's the basics of it. The client library is shipped with Delphi as a redistributable, which is fantastic. And I grabbed a community developed container from Docker Hub and used it with Podman to set up a instance of it that I could connect to from Delphi. So let's do some MongoDB. I've got a image here of MongoDB, which is a Docker image. The community, let's give it a name, MongoDB. If you don't get a name, it makes up one. Makes it easier just to remember what it is, I think. So there it's running now. And let's go ahead and connect to it. So this is the MongoDB sample that shipped with Delphi. And right now, there's not a lot of data in here because I just booted up a brand new fresh container. But if I go to the restaurant sample here and run that one, it has a load data here, which just injected all the restaurant data in there, and I can view the data. But the cool thing is I come back to this Explorer and run this. You can see here's the test data with all that restaurant data in here. And so here is the embedded data sets. So you can actually see this is an object, an address object. It's an object, but it's a BSON object where it has a building, a coordinates, a street, and a zip code. And then the coordinates, if I double click in here, is a data set, a pair. So let's see, I come here to grades and see this one has 4 grades, where this one also has 4 grades. Let's see, some of these have different number of grades. There we go. That one has 5 grades. And I could put another one in here too, but I'm not going to because you saw I had multiple different numbers. So there you go. That kind of gives you an idea of the way MongoDB works. The connection, I'll show you this, is the FDMongo dataset. So this is a different dataset because MongoDB uses different kind of data. Here's the connection. So all I have to do is specify Mongo as the driver ID. And in this case, my server is local because it's running in the container. And that's it. There's username and password. I could provide those, but I would set the default of no username and password for right now. But obviously in production, I would change that. Last thing I want to talk about is these new security and safety features that are included in FireDAC. And at first glance, these might seem like annoyances, but the key is that you want to set these after you've developed your application and have everything done correctly, so that what that means is that then your application, when it's running in the wild in production, cannot have its behavior changed in a way that compromise your database. All right. So the first one is allowed command kind. By default, all of them are turned on. But what you can do is that you have an FD query that should only ever do a query or only ever read data or only ever insert or something like that in order to prevent potential SQL injection that does other things you don't want it to do. You can go in here and disable any other command types except the command type you're using. And that way, if somehow the behavior of your SQL statement could get modified by an end user or corruption even, doesn't have to be malicious, it will allow it to execute. Allow multiple commands is similar to that. A lot of times in SQL injection, what you'll do is you'll have you put a command in that says I want to end the current command and start a new command. If you allow multiple commands to off, which is enabled by default for SQL and only on SQLite, Postgres, SQL, and MySQL. And I guess MariaDB because it's essentially MySQL. Don't know for sure, but you should check that. Then what it'll do is it will only let one command execute in a query. And most likely you're only executing one command in the query. So yeah, that's a good one to have on. Allow SQL change is one you turned on that prevents the SQL statement from being able to change at runtime. So if your SQL should always be hard-coded in there, this prevents it from being changed at runtime. So if something was to corrupt the memory, get in there and modify the memory of that and try and change that, it would not work. And then exact update records num is when it's turned on or when it's set to a specific value, then you can have it do additional checks when used with fetch options so that you're only ever updating exactly that number of records. So what it lets you do is say, this is my expected behavior. And then it will put checks in place to prevent a unexpected behavior to happen. So if you're like, I only want to update one record or only want to delete one record, and you forgot to put your where statement in there to predicate to restrict it down, and oh no, now you've done them all. Well, this would prevent that from happening. Probably not something that's going to happen in production code, but again, this safety, once it's enabled, can prevent those unexpected things from happening in production. And with that, we are done. If you want to grab the slides, most of the samples I showed were the ones that are shipped with Delphi, but if there are changes or whatever, I will include those as well. Will be in, and unless this gets mirrored, it might get mirrored, I'm not sure. There you see the GitHub link, GitHub/Jim McKeeth/FireDAC secret weapons, capitalized and hyphenated as you see there, and you can grab the slides there. Just like in my fundamentals of FireDAC, I cannot talk about FireDAC without mentioning Carrie's book, the Delphi In-Depth FireDAC. You can go find it. It's available, I think, on like Amazon and most print places. But you can also buy it directly from Carrie, as well as get more information from him there. He's Spirit of Delphi Award winner, just a pillar of the community and fantastic to have around, does a lot of great stuff. And I'm glad to call him a friend. So check that out there. Goes into way more details on everything we've talked about and so many other topics as well. And with that, we're going to do our Q&A.
Anyway, the good news is Jim is with us live in the studio.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hey. Yes, we can hear you fine. Hello, Houston.
Hello.
Yes.
I figured out what was going on with my webcam yesterday, so I should not be beaming up anymore.
Yes, you're not strobing. Yes, yeah. It's looking good. You do look like you're in a Photo Me booth. Do you remember those? It's like the curtains behind you. It's very good.
I'm in a studio room right now, so it's got for echo reduction.
Oh, that's impressive. I feel kind of cheapskate now. I'm just in my office, just as I always am. Yeah. Excellent. Oh, you've unmuted yourself. You said your mic was muted, but you're not. I can hear you. So there you go.
Yeah, it said host muted me, so I just wanted to let you know since that happened yesterday.
Yeah, I did notice. I was busy actually typing in your QR code. So up there in the top, there you go. I point to it. I'm learning. Is if you scan that goes to Jim's GitHub repository and goes to the one that he mentioned in the slides, which was what was it? FireDAC.
Secret weapons.
Secret weapons. That's it. Yes. My QR code editor has hidden the end of it, so I can't see what the actual URL was. And as I have the memory of a goldfish, because I've just copied and pasted it, you think I'd remember. And so go to there if you want his example code. And also, if you want to know where Jim works, that's where he works. He is the director of GDK USA. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. I think we talked about this yesterday, but producer Martha, is always omnipresent in the background and never sleeps. She obviously is not actually a real girl, but an android or something like that. She says, I always mute everyone before we add to the live, but I unmuted Jim when you put him on. See, she every time she makes me look good, and I'm actually completely incompetent. So one question I had, which let me just see if there were some questions in here. It was just people basically repeating links. You answered quite a few of them. The question I had, which I think is worth asking again, because I didn't know the answer to this, and you do. If people are using MongoDB, if they use MySQL, for example, they need libmariah db.dll, or they need libmysql.dll, which are client libraries to connect to the database. My question to you was, behind the scenes, does MongoDB need a client library as well? Because I haven't actually done anything with MongoDB in Delphi. I did in another language, but not this one. I was going to let you answer that question.
So yes, it does need a library. And actually, I'm going to share my screen.
Risky business, sharing a screen unplanned. It's always a good one.
Do you see it now?
We don't actually, no. Oh yeah, hang on, I can do it here. Apparently I have to make it happen. There you go. So
there is two files it needs. Libs bson 1.0, which is the bson library, which bson is their flavor of JSON, and then libmongo c 1.0.dll. But the great news is both of those are in the redistributable folder.
Oh, cool.
You know what? I haven't looked to see about Linux or Mac OS. It might not be supported on those platforms. Honestly, I've never tried it. But for Windows, at least they're included. And you don't have to do anything for Windows. You would need to bundle those in from the redistributables as you would any other redistributable. But the good news is they're already installed with Delphi. So.
Oh, that's brilliant. I mean, I've used MongoDB, but with Python, funny enough, of all things. And the way that Python works, it wasn't really an issue. It worked. I had to do the usual, include a load of stuff, and then it worked. And I didn't really need to understand how it worked. As long as it worked, that was where I was at. So that's cool. Okay, so
and they have the. I scrolled down the page. They have Mac OS and Linux there as well. So I thought they must, but I couldn't remember offhand.
Yeah, no, I couldn't either. I'm like, probably. It sounds like because MongoDB it's completely open source, isn't it? I think it is.
It's called a source available database. So there's there's the open source initiative, OSI, that has these rules of what they consider to be open source, right? Which goes back to the Richard Stallman's free as in speech, not as in beer.
It's GNU/Linux, actually. Yes.
Yes. So it's not under an OSI compliant license anymore. I think I may have been at one point, but I'm not positive. But it's source available, but it is freely available. Which
I bet you that's an encryption thing. I bet you there's some kind of encryption that some government somewhere says you can't send that out. Therefore,
I'm pretty sure it's a business thing, but I'm not.
Oh, really? Yeah, the money men are holding back. Is that what it is? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're a big fan of FireDAC, and both of us know Kerry, and you know, he's a really great guy. I met him in Amsterdam with his wife, actually, and she's an MVP as well. I don't know whether I'm sure you knew that, but she was saying, is she still an MVP? I'm like, yeah, I've removed her, so yes. But you know, Kerry is really, really good at FireDAC, and actually, I answered a question for him about MySQL a while ago. That's how fiddly MySQL is. That the guy that really knows his stuff, I don't know, that library is just a pain in the neck sometimes. I wish they would
use the MariaDB ones.
Yeah, that's pretty much what my advice is download the MariaDB. But FireDAC is every time you do something with FireDAC, you learn something new that it can do. And you, I didn't know it could do that. And it does this as well.
One of the things I love about FireDAC, and I didn't talk about this, and I kept debating it, is there's a thing called stored settings or something like that you can do, and you can say, I don't want, because this used to hit me all the time, is that I would have it active at design time, and then it would keep it active, but you can go in and say, don't keep it active at design time, only at runtime, or vice versa. And that is, it's got all these little refinements in it that are just, if you've been working with dataset descendants for years, there's so many things in FireDAC. They're just like, wow,
MySQL DAC is a really great DAC for MySQL, but for the longest time, it had a bug where it didn't matter what you set to connection to, you could go into the DFM, edit it manually, and it would still come up enabled. It was so frustrating. And yes, I mean, that was the one change that FireDAC did very cleverly. It's pretty clever. Yeah, so I think that's it for now. You've not got any more. Oh, yes, you do have another session planned, don't you? Something to do with colors, is that right?
Yes, I do.
Yes, that's because I saw your project and thought that's a cool project. I'd like to see that make its way to the light of day. When's that? Is that tomorrow? I think
so.
Yes, it is. Currently planned for 1 p.m. Although anything's possible. It's called Program the Rainbow, Working with Colors. It makes you sound like some Walt Disney thing. Program the Rainbow. I really like that. Oh, Sesame Street or something.
Skittles was Taste the Rainbow, so.
Oh, that's where I've heard a similar phrase before. Yeah. Yeah, I like Skittles, except my blood sugar doesn't like it. And acid reflux and the rest. Once you get older, everything in your body hates everything nice. And you can only eat like chalk or something. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Jim. It's really good every time you come on. You're such a hero of Delphi. You really are. And I know you're not doing the Embarcadero thing, but you're still pumping away with all the videos and things like that. And everybody appreciates what you do. You know from when you're in the live events and things like that, you've got an awful lot of fans out there, and it's a big set of shoes to step into afterwards. You know, it's tricky stuff. But
yeah, and I may not be at Embarcadero, but I'm happy to be at GDK. I mean, it was great to find a group of developers that's just as enthusiastic about Delphi as I am. Honestly, you know,
and they are. I absolutely agree. That's what they are as well. You know, I mean, obviously, in the role that I have to be kind of even-handed with everybody, and I think I am. Mm-hmm. But you know, obviously, there are some people where I know them better, or you know, deal with them more often. And everybody at GDK is just insanely passionate about Delphi, and they all pull in the same direction as well. As a company, they are really impressive. I've seen them operate in Amsterdam as a unit, as a group of people, and it's absolutely impressive. And Marco G and Keys and all the others, I think leadership goes a long way in producing the right atmosphere in a company, and I can see that they're clearly decent guys. Otherwise, you couldn't maintain the level of happiness that you get from those people out there. Not without severe brutality in rooms that you lock people in for. I'm sure that doesn't happen.
some of the things that really impressed me when I first was talking to them is they have a once a month they have a called Vivid Days, where everybody gets a day to use for side projects or learning something new. And so you just get a whole day to take and go to teach yourself some new stuff. And then every couple weeks, I think it is, they have knowledge sessions where somebody from the company then does an internal training for everybody else to teach them stuff they learned from Vivid Days or just things they've discovered along the way. And then they also do an annual company day where people from all 4 offices come together in one place to have a week long just sharing stuff and teaching each other things and stuff like that. So just that level of commitment to the development of the individuals in the company is really impressive, and that comes across in the work that everybody does, because then everybody, they're sharing knowledge, and if you don't know the answer, who knows the answer at the company, and they're all there. And actually, when I was in the office in the Netherlands, they have lunch together every day and then go on for a walk together. And then if it's raining, which it does a lot in the Netherlands, then they play Mario Kart on the Switch. So it's great having this really, it's a fantastic team. And just excited to be part of that. So
I've worked remotely for so many years. I can't remember what it's like to actually work in an office, but I remember I was probably the annoying one in the office. So I'm not so sure I'd go down so well in an environment like that, but you never know. But Patrick Prematanta, who you obviously know, he's a big fan. He says great practices, and I think he means about GDK. And this is the thing, being a developer, I still personally think is something special. It's not like, working. There's plenty of valuable jobs out there that are definitely required and needed, and a lot harder than what we do. My brother-in-law is a ER surgeon, and I don't know how he gets any sleep at night. He's literally got someone die on the table in front of him, and it's a child or something. That's a tough job. My job is not tough, but also there are many other roles. But I think there's a definite mindset and personality and attitude that goes with programming and software development. And I think you and I are probably the slightly more loud and ebullient ones in the general scheme of things, which is why, you've done DevRel and I do DevRel. But I think for me, I still think that being a software developer is something that you either are one or you're not. You can get taught to program, and you can get better, but if you're not built the right way intellectually and in terms of your personality disposition, you're wasting your time, because you'll either be unhappy in the job or you'll be hopeless at it, or both, unhappy and hopeless. And I think that you can still be mediocre and be the right person, but hey, that's the way it goes. But I think GDK are a reflection of a very good mentality for making sure that developers fit in and the other staff fit in and get on with it, and they really do back Delphi to the hilt. So I'm on their side. It's like when I talk about TMS and people say, you talk about TMS a lot. If they stop writing good components, I will stop talking about them. It's the same with GDK. If they stop being awesome, then I'll never talk about them again. So, All right. Well, thanks a lot, Jim. I think I'll be seeing you tomorrow. Yes, because we talked about it. Thanks a lot, and speak to you soon.
All right. Take care.